The house on Granger Street looked ordinary in the autumn rain. A single-story structure with an addition that stretched too far into the back lot. White siding that had once been clean. A van in the driveway with no front plates. Nothing about it suggested what happened inside after the sun went down. Iris Aldridge stood in the upstairs bathroom, 10 years old, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that hadn't been washed in 3 days. She pressed her ear against the door and listened to Vincent Larkin's voice drift up from the office below. The rain tapped against the window, steady, patient, the kind of rain that settles in for the night and doesn't leave until morning. "Friday pickup," Vincent said into the phone. His voice carried the particular flatness of a man discussing inventory. The younger Chen boy, 9 years old. "Everything's ready." Iris's hand tightened on the doorknob. Not Chen. Aldridge. Caleb Aldridge. Her brother. 9 years old and still afraid of the dark and slept with his stuffed rabbit even though the other boys made fun of him for it. Friday. That was 5 days from now. She stepped back from the door, moved to the small window that overlooked the backyard. The property line backed up against an alley, a fence with a gate that Vincent never locked because he assumed none of the children would run. Why would they run? Where would they go? Iris had been asking herself the same question for 2 weeks, ever since her mother had dropped her and Caleb off at this house with a promise to return. 2 weeks of watching, waiting, learning the patterns. Vincent woke at 6, made coffee at 6:15, checked on the children at 9 every night without fail. Never earlier, never later. The back gate squeaked when it opened. The third step on the staircase creaked under weight. The office door locked from the outside, but the window didn't latch properly. Small details, the kind a scared child notices when there's nothing else to hold on to. But Iris wasn't scared anymore. She'd run out of scared 3 days ago when she'd realized her mother wasn't coming back. She reached under her shirt and pulled out the silver ring that hung from a thin chain around her neck. Her mother had pressed it into her hand that last morning, the morning everything had still seemed temporary, manageable. The morning before 2 weeks of silence stretched into something that felt permanent. "If I don't come back in 14 days, her mother had whispered, kneeling in the driveway while Vincent waited by the front door. "Find Wade Brennan, show him this, tell him Granger Street, he'll understand." Iris had wanted to ask questions. Why 14 days? Who was Wade Brennan? What was her mother handling that required dropping her children at a stranger's house? But her mother's face had held something Iris recognized even then. The look of someone who didn't have time for questions because time had already run out. So Iris had taken the ring, memorized the name, Wade Brennan, and watched her mother drive away in a car that needed the passenger door held shut with a bungee cord. 14 days had passed yesterday. Iris stood in the bathroom and made her decision the way a 10-year-old makes every decision that matters. Without ceremony, without drama, just a quiet shift from one reality to another. Caleb had 5 days. She had 3 sick notes already written. One for each morning she'd be gone. She'd practiced Vincent's patterns long enough to know he didn't check on sick children during the day. Too much trouble, too much exposure to whatever bug they'd caught. He'd take her word for it through a closed door. She'd learned that from Emma, 11 years old and already an expert at buying time. 3 days to find Wade Brennan, whoever he was, wherever he was. The bar with the eagle sign. That's what her mother had said. Main Street, a bar, an eagle, a man who would understand a silver ring and a name whispered in a driveway 2 weeks ago. Iris turned from the window, dried her hands on the towel that 6 children shared, checked her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired. Good. Sick children looked tired. She'd sell it tomorrow morning when Vincent came to count heads before breakfast. She opened the bathroom door and walked down the hallway past the room where Caleb slept in a bunk bed with 3 other boys. She didn't look in, couldn't afford to. If she saw him sleeping with that stupid rabbit tucked under his chin, she'd lose her nerve. The plan required nerve. It required walking out of this house at 6 in the morning 3 days from now and not looking back until she found a man she'd never met and convinced him to believe a story that sounded impossible even to her. But impossible was better than Friday. Better than watching Caleb get into that van with no front plates and no bags and no promise of return. So Iris walked to her room, climbed into bed, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and stared at the ceiling while the rain continued its patient work against the window. She didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the next. By the time Friday morning arrived, she'd stopped expecting sleep anyway. The first note went onto her pillow at 5:45, written in the careful block letters of a child trying very hard to seem normal. I'm sick. Staying in bed today, Iris. She left it where Vincent would see it when he did his morning count. Then she slipped down the creaking staircase, stepped over the third step, moved through the kitchen where yesterday's dishes still sat in the sink, out the back door, through the gate that squeaked exactly the way she knew it would. The alley was empty. Dawn hadn't broken yet. The town still slept under its blanket of autumn fog. Iris walked. She'd stolen a jacket from the donation box in the basement. Bright red, too big in the shoulders. The zipper broken, but it was warm and it was hers, and she wore it like armor as she moved through streets she didn't recognize toward a destination she couldn't name. Main Street, a bar, an eagle sign. Her mother had said it like Iris would know what that meant. Like every 10-year-old carried a mental map of the town's drinking establishments. Iris didn't even know where Main Street was, so she walked until the sun came up, asked a woman opening a flower shop, got directions that led her 3 blocks east and 2 blocks south, walked until her feet hurt and the red jacket felt less like armor and more like a beacon announcing her presence to anyone who cared to look. No one looked. That was the thing she'd learned over the past 2 weeks. Adults didn't see children unless the children made themselves seen. And Iris had spent 2 weeks learning how to be invisible. She used that invisibility now. Moved through the morning crowds without making eye contact. Ducked into a library when a police car rolled past. Waited in the children's section until her heart stopped racing. The library closed at 9. Iris hid in the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the toilet lid, and ate the granola bars she'd stolen from the Cane House kitchen 3 days ago. Drank water from the sink, waited until she heard the night janitor's cart roll past. Then she slipped out, found an alcove behind the building, curled up in her red jacket with her back against brick that still held the day's heat. She didn't sleep, just waited for morning. Day 2 looked like day 1. More walking, more questions asked to people who pointed in different directions. A homeless man outside a diner who shared half his sandwich and asked if she was lost. I'm looking for someone, Iris had said. Aren't we all, kid? But he'd pointed her toward Main Street anyway. Told her to look for the tall buildings. The bars didn't open until evening, but the signs stayed up all day. Iris thanked him, shared her apple, moved on. She slept in a church alcove that night. The stone was colder than the library brick, but the overhang kept the rain off. She woke when the bells rang for 6 o'clock mass, slipped away before anyone could ask questions. Day 3, Sunday. The town moved slower, families dressed in their good clothes, heading to services. Iris stayed in the shadows, kept her head down, followed Main Street from end to end looking for an eagle that might not exist. She found it at 7:15 in the evening, a wooden sign hanging from a post outside a squat building with motorcycles parked in the gravel lot. The eagle had been carved by someone who understood birds of prey. Wings spread, talons extended, eyes that seemed to follow her as she approached. Below it burned into the wood in letters that had faded but still held. The eagle. Iris stood in the rain and looked at that sign for a long time. 3 days of walking had led her here, to this building with its darkened windows and its engines parked outside like patient animals waiting for their riders to return. She could hear music inside, low, the kind that rumbled more than played. Voices, men's voices, laughter that sounded like it came from somewhere deep and genuine. Her mother had sent her here, to these men, this place. Iris touched the ring under her shirt, felt the chain against her neck, the silver band still warm from her body heat. Wade Brennan. She didn't know what he looked like, didn't know if he'd even be here, didn't know if the ring would mean anything to a man she'd never met. But Caleb had 3 days, and Iris had walked through rain and fear and 3 nights of no sleep to get here. So she straightened her spine, pulled the red jacket tighter around her shoulders, and walked through the door. The bar went quiet the way bars do when something unexpected happens. Not silent, just a lowering of volume, a shifting of attention. The music kept playing, but the conversations died mid-sentence. Iris stood just inside the door. Water dripped from her jacket onto the wooden floor. Her boots left wet prints, small, the prints of a child who'd walked farther than she should have been able to. The room held maybe 20 men, some at tables, some at the bar. All of them turned to look at her with expressions that ranged from surprise to concern to something that might have been recognition. She scanned their faces, looking for something, some sign, some indication of which one might be Wade Brennan. And then she saw him. Not because he stood, not because he called out, but because he went completely still in the way that people do when they've seen a ghost. He sat at a corner table, alone, a beer in front of him that he'd been drinking when she walked in. Now his hand rested flat on the table, and his eyes were locked on something around her neck. The ring. Iris walked toward him, didn't hesitate, didn't stop when the other men shifted to watch. Just moved through the bar like she knew exactly where she was going, like she'd planned this moment for 3 days because she had. She stopped at his table. He looked up slowly. 50 maybe. Maybe younger and just worn. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Lines around his eyes that spoke of hard years and harder choices. He wore a leather vest over a black shirt. Patches on the vest. Symbols Iris didn't understand. But she understood the way he was looking at the ring. Like it meant something. Like it hurt to see it hanging around her neck. "Where did you get that?" His voice came out rough, unused to surprise. Iris reached up and pulled the ring out from under her shirt, let it hang visible against the red jacket. "From my mother," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "She told me you'd know what it means." The bar had gone completely still now. Even the music seemed to lower. Every man in the room watching this moment unfold with the attention of people who recognized significance when they saw it. Wade Brennan stared at the ring, then at her, then back at the ring. "Sit down," he said. His chair scraped back. Iris pulled out the chair across from him and sat. Her feet didn't touch the floor. She let them dangle, kept her hands in her lap, maintained eye contact the way her mother had taught her. Never look away first. People who look away first lose. "What's your name?" Wade asked. "Iris." "How old are you?" 10. He absorbed this, processing. His hands stayed flat on the table, like he was keeping them there on purpose. Like if he moved them, he might do something he'd regret. "Your mother," he said carefully. "What's her name?" "Grace. Grace Aldridge." The name landed in the space between them. Iris watched Wade's face, watched something move through his expression. Recognition. Pain. Something older than both. A man at the bar, tall, younger than Wade, set his glass down hard enough that it clicked against the wood. Another man turned on his stool, slow, deliberate, but Wade kept his eyes on Iris. "Where is she?" he asked. Iris's hands moved from her lap to the table, flat, mimicking Wade's posture without meaning to. "I don't know," she said. "She gave me the ring 2 weeks ago. She said if anything happened to her, I should find the bar with the eagle sign and show it to whoever was in charge." Her voice didn't shake. She'd practiced this part, knew she needed to get through it without breaking down. "She said you'd know what it meant." Outside, the rain had picked up. Iris could hear it against the roof. Steady, relentless, the sound of water that had been falling for 3 days and showed no sign of stopping. Wade's jaw worked. He looked at the ring, looked at her, then he reached across the table, not for the ring, for the lamp that sat at the table's edge. He pulled it closer, tilted it so the light fell directly on the silver band. Iris watched him examine it, watched his finger trace something on its surface. A scratch maybe, an imperfection that meant something to him. I gave this to my sister, he said quietly, the winter she turned 17. There's a cross etched here. See it? And this scratch, right here along the edge. That's been there since the day I gave it to her. He looked up, met Iris's eyes. I haven't seen this ring in 11 years, not since the night Grace and I stopped speaking. The confession hung between them, raw, unadorned, the kind of truth that comes out when there's no time left for anything else. She never said anything bad about you, Iris offered, because it was true, because her mother had been careful about that. Never blamed, never accused. Just went quiet when Iris asked about family, about the uncle she'd never met, about the reasons they were alone. Wade didn't answer that, just looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the bar, opened a drawer behind it, came back with an envelope, yellow, the kind of paper that had sat in darkness for years. He set it on the table between them. Grace sent this 11 years ago. I never opened it. Iris looked at the envelope, at Wade's hands as he pulled it toward him, at the way his fingers hesitated before sliding under the flap. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once, the creases deep from age. Wade unfolded it, read. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Wade, he read aloud, if someone brings you this ring, it means I failed. Don't fail them. Grace. He set the letter down, looked at Iris. How long have you been looking for me? 3 days, Iris said. I left Friday morning. Found the sign tonight. Where did you sleep? Library the first night. Church the second. I was going to find somewhere tonight, but then I saw the eagle. Wade absorbed this without comment, just filed it away with all the other pieces he was collecting. Tell me about the house, he said. So Iris told him about Vincent Arkin and the house on Granger Street, about the 6 children living in rooms that held too many beds, about the rules, no calls, no visitors, nothing leaving the house without permission, about Marcus, 12 years old, gone 3 weeks ago on what Vincent called a field trip, no bags, no warning, just gone, about Caleb, 9 years old, her brother, whose name appeared in Vincent's binder with a date circled, Friday, 3 days from now. Wade listened without interrupting. The bartender brought Iris a bowl of soup without being asked, set it down with a gentleness that suggested he'd been listening too. Iris looked at the soup, then at Wade. Are you hungry? He asked. Yes. Then eat. She picked up the spoon, started eating with the focused efficiency of someone who'd learned not to draw attention to hunger. The soup was hot, simple. It tasted like safety felt, temporary but real. Wade watched her for a moment, then he turned toward the bar. Reese, he called. The tall man who'd set his glass down earlier stepped away from the bar, moved to the table with the easy confidence of someone used to being summoned. Yeah, I need you to take a ride, Granger Street, house at the end. I need eyes on it. Don't stop. Don't approach. Just tell me what you see. Reese looked at Iris, at the soup, at Wade. Then he nodded once. Be back in 20. He was through the door before Wade finished, turning back to Iris. How did you know Vincent wouldn't notice you were gone? Wade asked. Iris set down her spoon, reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a piece of paper folded small. She unfolded it on the table. 3 notes, written in her careful handwriting. I'm sick, staying in bed today, Iris. Each one identical, dated Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I left the first one this morning. I'll leave the others tonight and tomorrow if I'm not back. Wade looked at the notes, at her. You planned this? Yes. How long? 2 weeks, since Mom left us there. She pulled out another paper, this one larger, unfolded it more carefully because the creases were deep and the paper had been handled too many times. A map, hand-drawn, every room labeled, every window marked, arrows showing which doors opened which way, notes about squeaking gates and creaking stairs and where Vincent kept the binder. Wade took the map, studied it. His expression didn't change, but Iris watched something shift in his posture. The way he held the paper, the care he took with it. You drew this, yes, from memory. How long did it take? 2 weeks. Mom taught me to pay attention, to remember details. She said details save lives. Wade set the map down carefully, looked at Iris with an expression she couldn't quite read. Your mother taught you well. She taught me to survive, Iris said quietly. I'm trying to teach Caleb the same thing, but he's 9, and he's scared, and Friday they're taking him somewhere he won't come back from. The words sat heavy on the table. True, undeniable. The kind of truth that demanded response. Wade stood, walked to the bar, had a quiet conversation with 3 men who'd been watching from their stools. They dispersed. Phone calls, movement, the kind of coordination that happened without orders being given. He came back to the table, sat down. Tell me about the binder, he said. So Iris did, about sneaking into Vincent's office, about the list of names and dates, about the 4 names crossed out, about Caleb's name circled in red with Friday's date. Vincent calls them placements, she said. He tells the kids they're going to families, but Marcus didn't have any bags, and the families never visit first, and the kids never write letters after. Wade's hands curled into fists on the table, slow, controlled, like he was keeping himself from doing something he wanted very badly to do. The door opened. Reese came back, rain-soaked. He moved to the table without stopping to dry off. House matches her map exactly, he said. Van in the driveway, no front plates, second vehicle on the street. Newer, out-of-state tags, back gates open, saw movement in the rear windows, couldn't get a count. Wade looked at Iris, at her map, back at Reese. How many adults could you make? Couldn't tell from the road, but the van's big enough for 5 or 6 if they're moving together. Wade nodded, processed. His fingers drummed once on the table. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. Hayes, it's Wade Brennan. I need you at the Eagle. Now, welfare concern on Granger Street. Kids in danger. He listened, hung up, made another call. Within 10 minutes, the bar had shifted. Men coming in, others leaving to position vehicles. The kind of choreography that spoke to practice, to preparation for moments exactly like this. Iris finished her soup, set the spoon down, kept her hands in her lap, and watched Wade coordinate with the quiet efficiency of someone used to command. At 8:23, he checked his watch, looked at Iris. Does Vincent know you're gone? Not yet, she said. Curfew's at 9. He counts heads then. He hasn't checked on me in 4 days. Wade absorbed this, calculated. That gives us 37 minutes before he realizes you're missing. Yes. If we move now, we can be at the house before he starts counting. Yes. Wade leaned forward, met her eyes. Iris, I need you to stay here, with merit. He gestured to the bartender. Young, kind eyes, the kind of face that suggested he'd volunteer for this duty without being asked. Caleb doesn't know you left, Wade continued. If something goes wrong, I need you safe. Iris wanted to argue, wanted to demand to go, to be there when they brought Caleb out. But she'd spent 3 days learning to read adults, to understand when arguing would help and when it would only waste time. This was a waste time moment. So she pulled out the map, slid it across to Wade. Caleb's room is the second window on the left upstairs. He sleeps in the bottom bunk. He has a stuffed rabbit. He won't leave without it. Wade took the map, folded it carefully, put it in his vest pocket. Anything else I should know? Vincent drinks coffee at 8:30. He'll need the bathroom by 8:50. The third step on the stairs creaks. If you step over it, he won't hear you coming. Wade looked at her for a long moment. Something moved through his expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. The kind that came from seeing yourself in someone else. You planned everything, Raya, he said. I planned everything I could, Iris corrected. The rest I'm leaving to you. He stood. The other men were already moving toward the door. Engines starting in the parking lot. The low rumble of motorcycles coming to life. Wade looked down at Iris one more time. I'm going to bring your brother home. Promise. I promise. Iris watched him walk to the door. Watched him pull on gloves. Check his vest. Exchange nods with men who'd stopped their lives to answer this call. The door opened. Rain and engine noise flooded in, and then they were gone. The bar went quiet, not empty. Merritt was still there, still behind the bar, still present, but the kind of quiet that follows when the people who fill a space suddenly leave and they take their energy with them. Iris sat in the booth, hands around the water glass Merritt had refilled without asking. She could hear the engines fading, could track their progress by sound alone as they moved through the rain toward Granger Street. Toward Caleb, toward Vincent, toward whatever happened when a 10-year-old's plan met the reality of men who'd spent their lives learning how to protect things worth protecting. Merritt pulled up a chair, sat across from her, didn't fill the silence with words, just sat, present. The kind of presence that said she wasn't alone even though she felt alone. Outside, the rain continued, patient, relentless. Iris touched the ring around her neck, felt the silver warm against her palm, and waited. The engines faded into the rain. Iris sat in the booth and listened to them go. First the deep rumble of Wade's bike, then the others, one by one, until the sound became part of the weather, part of the night, part of the distance growing between her and the men riding toward Granger Street. 8:47. 13 minutes until Vincent started counting heads. Merritt moved behind the bar, not cleaning, not restocking, just present. The way people are present when waiting is the only thing left to do. He'd pulled up a chair earlier, sat across from her without speaking. Now he stood and refilled her water glass from a pitcher that didn't need refilling. The bar held maybe 5 men still, older, the kind who stayed when others rode. They sat at their tables and didn't talk. Didn't pretend this was a normal Sunday evening. Just waited with the patience of people who'd done this before. Who knew how waiting worked when someone you cared about rode into uncertainty. Iris wrapped both hands around the water glass. The condensation made her palms wet. She didn't wipe them. Just held on. Felt the cold. Focused on something she could control when everything else had slipped beyond her reach 3 days ago. A clock hung above the bar. Old. The kind with hands that moved in small increments. Visible, countable. She watched the minute hand click forward. 8:48, 8:49. Merritt came back to the table, sat down again. He had kind eyes, the kind that had seen hard things and chosen kindness anyway. First time waiting for someone, he asked. His voice was quiet, not intrusive, just offering conversation if she wanted it. Iris looked at him, at the question, at the assumption that this was her first time. I waited for my mother for 14 days, she said. She didn't come back. The words came out flat, factual, the way truth sounds when emotion has been worn smooth by repetition. Merritt absorbed this, didn't flinch, didn't offer empty comfort. This is different, he said. How? Because Wade keeps his promises. Iris wanted to believe that, wanted to take it as certainty, but she'd spent 2 weeks learning that adults made promises they couldn't keep, that good intentions didn't stop bad things from happening, that sometimes people left and didn't come back no matter how hard you waited. What if I'm wrong? She asked. The question had been sitting in her chest since she walked out of the Kane house Friday morning. Since she'd made the decision that put all of this in motion. Since she'd chosen action over safety and hope over certainty. Wrong about what? About everything. About Uncle Wade helping. About the map being right. About them getting there before Vincent notices. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands tightened on the glass. What if they get hurt because of me? Merritt leaned back in his chair, studied her face, not with pity, with something closer to recognition. Iris, you walked through rain for 3 days to save your brother. You planned for 2 weeks. You drew that map from memory. You're not wrong. You're brave. Brave people still make mistakes. Yeah, they do. But they make them trying. That's what makes them brave. Iris looked down at the water glass, at her reflection distorted in the curved surface. A 10-year-old girl in a red jacket that didn't fit, hair that needed washing, eyes that had seen too much and still had to keep seeing because Caleb needed her to. I think my mother is dead, she said quietly. The confession came out without planning, without build-up, just the truth she'd been carrying alone for days. Merritt didn't rush to deny it, didn't offer false hope, just sat with it. What makes you think that people don't disappear for 2 weeks and come back? I watch TV. I know how these things work. Sometimes they do come back, but not usually. Usually they're just gone. She looked up at him. But Caleb is alive. I can save Caleb. So I have to, even if mom's gone, even if I'm scared. I have to. Merritt's eyes reflected something that might have been tears, but he didn't let them fall. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard, he said. It doesn't feel brave, it just feels like the only choice. That's what brave always feels like. 8:52, the clock hands moved with mechanical precision, indifferent to the weight each minute carried, indifferent to a 9-year-old boy who didn't know his sister had spent 3 days walking through rain to find men who rode motorcycles and kept promises. Iris stood, paced to the window, looked out at the parking lot, empty except for a few bikes that belonged to the men still inside. Rain fell through the glow of a single light pole, steady, endless. She pressed her forehead against the glass, felt the cold, tried to imagine what was happening 5 miles away on Granger Street, tried to see Wade knocking on the door, Vincent answering, the moment when everything either worked or fell apart. Her breath fogged the window. She drew a small eagle in the condensation. Wings spread, the way the sign outside looked, the way her mother had described it 2 weeks ago, when she'd pressed the ring into Iris's hand and whispered instructions that had seemed impossible then and seemed inevitable now. Behind her, Merritt moved to the bar, turned on a police scanner. The static filled the space between them, voices crackling through, codes Iris didn't understand, locations that meant nothing. The background noise of a town going about its Sunday evening while her entire world balanced on the next 13 minutes. 8:54. Somewhere on Granger Street, Wade's column would be arriving, cutting engines 2 blocks out the way Reese had done earlier. The way men moved when they understood the value of surprise. The way hunters approached prey that had grown comfortable in its territory. Iris had given Wade everything she could, the map, the timing, the details about Vincent's patterns. Now it was out of her hands, in the hands of men she'd known for less than 2 hours. Men who'd stopped their lives because a 10-year-old girl had walked into their bar with a silver ring and a story that demanded action. She wiped the eagle off the window, turned back to the booth, sat down. Merritt brought the scanner to the table, set it between them. The voices continued their rhythm. Dispatch calling units, units responding. The ordinary machinery of law enforcement on a Sunday night in a town where nothing much happened. Until tonight, 8:56. Wade would be at the door now, based on the timeline she'd calculated, based on the distance and the route, and the time it took to position men around a property they'd never seen before but knew from a hand-drawn map made by a child who'd memorized every detail. Iris closed her eyes, tried to slow her breathing, tried to find the calm she'd maintained for 3 days. The calm that had gotten her here, that had kept her moving when everything in her wanted to stop and curl up and wait for adults to fix things. But adults didn't fix things, not without help, not without children brave enough or desperate enough to walk through rain and ask for what they needed. The scanner crackled. A voice came through, clear, official. Unit 4, respond to 47 Granger Street. Welfare check requested by Deputy Hayes. Iris's eyes snapped open. Merritt leaned forward, turned up the volume. Unit 4 responding. ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Hayes was sending backup, which meant Wade had made the call, had gotten Hayes involved, had set the official wheels in motion alongside whatever unofficial action the Brotherhood was taking. Merritt, Iris said. Yeah, if this goes wrong, if something happens, will you tell Caleb that I tried? Merritt looked at her, at the question, at the assumption behind it. Nothing's going wrong, he said. Wade's got this. But if it does, then I'll tell him, but I won't need to, because you're going to tell him yourself. 8:59, 1 minute. Vincent would be starting his count now, moving through the house, checking rooms, calling names. The nightly ritual that kept 6 children in line through routine and predictability and the certainty that someone was always watching. Except tonight, someone was missing. And the sick notes Iris had left would only work until Vincent decided to check on her personally. Until he opened the door and found an empty bed and pillows arranged to look like a sleeping child. How long would that take? How long before he realized, before he called, whoever he called when things went wrong, before the Friday appointment became an emergency extraction? The scanner crackled again. All units be advised. Possible code 3 at 47 Granger Street. Multiple witnesses reporting motorcycle presence in residential area. Units 4 and 7 responding. Iris's breath caught. Multiple witnesses, which meant neighbors had seen Wade's column, had called it in, had turned a quiet approach into something visible. That's not good, she whispered. Merritt's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. That's exactly what Wade wanted. Witnesses, visibility. Hard to make kids disappear when the whole neighborhood's watching. Iris hadn't thought of that, hadn't considered that being seen might be part of the strategy. That men on motorcycles in a residential neighborhood would draw attention, would create the kind of pressure that made guilty people make mistakes. He's smart, she said. He's been doing this a long time. The clock hit 9 curfew. Vincent would be counting now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where's 6? Who's missing? Check the rooms. Find the note. Sick in bed. But which bed? Which room? When did I last see her? Iris's hands shook. She pressed them flat on the table, tried to steady herself the way she'd steadied herself for 3 days. But the waiting was harder than the walking, the not knowing harder than the not having. 9:01. The scanner continued. Unit 4 on scene at Granger Street, confirming motorcycle presence. Approximately 12 to 15 bikes. No signs of disturbance. Initiating contact with residents. 12 to 15 bikes. Wade had brought everyone. The entire chapter. Every man who could ride had ridden. For her, for Caleb, for children they'd never met. Iris felt something break in her chest. Not bad, not painful, just the release of pressure she'd been holding since Friday morning. The knowledge that she wasn't alone anymore, that she'd found the Eagles, that they'd come. The front door of the bar opened. Cold air rushed in. A man Iris didn't recognize. Wet from rain. He moved to Merritt, spoke low. Hayes is on site. Wade's at the front door. Vincent opened up. Merritt nodded, looked at Iris. It's happening. Iris stood, moved to the window again, as if being closer to the glass would let her see 5 miles through rain and darkness to a house where her brother slept unaware that his sister had moved heaven and earth to reach him. 9:03. The scanner continued its narrative. Units arriving, situation assessment. Request for social services. The language of official intervention layering over whatever unofficial conversation Wade was having with Vincent Larkin at the front door of 47 Granger Street. Unit 7 requesting backup, confirming 6 juveniles on site, ages approximately 7 to 12. Adult male claims licensed foster facility. 6 juveniles, all accounted for, including Caleb. Iris's knees went weak. She caught herself on the window frame, stayed standing through force of will. "He's there," she whispered. "Caleb's there." Merritt was beside her, hand on her shoulder, steady. "He's there and Wade's got him." But the scanner kept talking, and what it said next made Iris's blood go cold. "Be advised, adult male asking for documentation. Claims 1 juvenile unaccounted for. Female age 10 reported sick in bed. Name Iris Aldridge. Requesting verification." Vincent had noticed, had done the count, had come up short, was using her absence as leverage, as proof that his facility was legitimate, that children were cared for, that sick kids stayed in bed while healthy kids followed rules. "He's going to check my room," Iris said. "He's going to find the pillows." "Let him," Merritt said. "Let him find an empty sped. Let him try to explain why a 10-year-old ran away from his care." The scanner crackled. A new voice. Hayes. Deputy Hayes on scene requesting permission to check on reported sick child. Adult male complying. Silence. Long enough that Iris counted heartbeats. 20, 30, 40. Then the scanner spoke again. Deputy Hayes reporting. Juvenile female not in designated room. Adult male unable to provide location. Expanding search of premises. Merritt squeezed Iris's shoulder. "There it is. He's caught. Can't explain where you went. Can't produce a sick child. Can't account for his numbers." The scanner erupted. Multiple voices. Units requesting instructions. Social services en route. Request for female officer. Code for Child Protective Services. And underneath it all, the sound of a structure collapsing, of a careful system built on routine and fear coming apart because one 10-year-old girl had walked away. 9:07, Unit 4 reporting. 5 juveniles removed from common area. Female officer conducting interviews. Adult male requesting attorney. Attorney, which meant Vincent knew it was over. Knew that asking for a lawyer was the only move left when all other moves had failed. Iris pressed her hand against the window, left a print in the condensation. Small, the size of a child's hand. Proof that she'd been here, that she'd waited, that she'd set this in motion and seen it through. "They're going to bring them out," she said. "Yeah, all of them. All of them, including Caleb. Especially Caleb." 9:12. The scanner spoke with mechanical efficiency. Social services on site, taking custody of 6 juveniles, ages 9 to 12. All appear physically unharmed, conducting preliminary assessments. 6 juveniles. Emma, the boys who shared Caleb's room, and Caleb. Iris tried to picture it. Hayes talking to them, asking questions. The kids answering with the careful neutrality of children who'd learned that adult questions often had wrong answers. Who'd learned to say what was expected rather than what was true. But Emma would talk. Emma was 11 and smart and had covered for Iris for 3 days. Emma knew what was happening. Emma would tell them about the binder, about the crossed out names, about Friday appointments that came with circled dates. Unit 4 requesting evidence collection, adult male's office, possible documentation related to juvenile placements. There it was, the binder, Vincent's careful records, the proof of what he'd been doing, the dates, the names, the pattern that would look exactly like what it was once someone with authority examined it. 9:18. Iris's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, sat on the floor beneath the window. Merritt came down with her, sat beside her without comment, just present. "It's working," Iris said. "The plan is working." "Your plan," Merritt corrected. "This is your plan working exactly the way you designed it." I didn't design anything. I just walked to a bar. You walked to a bar with a map and a timeline and intelligence gathered over 2 weeks. You designed this. Wade's just executing it. The scanner continued. More units, more voices. The arrival of a social worker named Mrs. Monroe. The transport of 6 children to county services. The arrest of Vincent Larkin on charges of child endangerment pending investigation. Each update another brick in the foundation of what Iris had built. Another confirmation that walking away had been right. That 3 days of rain and fear and empty stomachs had led exactly where they needed to lead. 923. Unit 4 to dispatch. 6 juveniles secured en route to county services for processing and placement. Adult male in custody. Scene secured. Secured, which meant it was over. The operation, the rescue, the moment when everything balanced on whether adults would believe a 10-year-old story. They'd believed it. Iris pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them, let herself feel small for the first time in 3 days, let herself be 10 years old instead of the age she'd had to be to survive. When will they bring Caleb here? She asked. Soon, Merritt said. Wade will want you to see him before they take you to county services. County services, they have to process you, make sure you're okay, find temporary placement until they sort out what happens next. Iris hadn't thought about what came after. After the rescue, after Caleb was safe, after the part where she saved him. She'd only thought as far as getting him out, getting him away, getting him somewhere that wasn't that house with its circled dates and its appointments that ended with children disappearing. Will they separate us? She asked. Me and Caleb, Merritt's hesitation told her everything. They'll try to keep you together, but I can't promise. I need to be with him. He doesn't do well alone. I know. He'll be scared. Wade knows that too. He'll make sure they understand. Iris wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that the system that had failed to protect them would somehow succeed in keeping them together now. But trust was expensive, and she'd spent most of hers in the last 2 weeks. The scanner crackled, a new voice, Wade's voice, gravel and certainty. This is Brennan. We're heading back to the Eagle. ETA 15 minutes. Tell Iris her brother is safe. Iris's breath caught, hearing it, hearing Wade say it directly. Not through official channels, not through O's and U's and dispatch protocol, just direct, simple. The promise kept. Merritt stood, offered his hand, pulled Iris to her feet. You heard the man, Caleb's coming home. Home. The word felt strange. Iris didn't have a home anymore. Hadn't had one since her mother dropped them at Vincent's house 2 weeks ago. But maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was wherever Caleb was, wherever she could keep him safe. The sound of engines reached them before the bikes appeared. Low rumble building, growing. The sound of men returning from war. Victorious, intact. Iris moved to the door. Merritt opened it. Rain blew in. Cold, clean, washing everything. The first bike appeared. Wade's headlight cutting through the dark. Behind him the others, one by one. Pulling into the lot, engines cutting, silence after sound. The kind of quiet that follows when something significant has ended. Wade's bike carried 2 riders. Wade in front. Someone smaller behind him. Arms wrapped around Wade's waist, head pressed against his back. Caleb. Iris stepped out into the rain. Didn't run, just walked. Steady, the way she'd walked for 3 days. The way she'd learned to move when running would only waste energy she couldn't spare. Wade cut the engine, swung off the bike, reached back to help Caleb down. Caleb stood in the gravel, 9 years old, soaked through, wearing a jacket too small, eyes wide, searching, finding. Iris, his voice came out small, uncertain, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Like 3 days of sick notes had convinced him she was gone. I'm here, Caleb. He crossed the distance between them, not running either, just walking, the same measured pace, the same uncertainty. They met in the middle of the parking lot in the rain under the eagle sign that had brought them here. Iris wrapped her arms around her brother, felt him shaking, felt his tears against her shoulder, felt his hands clutch her red jacket like she might disappear if he let go. "You came back," he whispered. "I never left. I just went to get help. I thought you were gone, like Mom." "I'm not gone. I'm right here." She held him tighter, felt his heart beating against hers. Fast, afraid, alive. Behind them, Wade dismounted, stood with the other men, watching, not intruding, just bearing witness to the moment their action had created. Iris looked over Caleb's shoulder, found Wade's eyes across the lot. "Thank you," she said. Wade nodded once. A small gesture. Acknowledgement without claiming credit. The action of a man who understood that some thank yous couldn't be properly answered, could only be accepted. Headlights swept into the lot. A county vehicle, official. Mrs. Monroe stepped out. Mid-50s, kind face, the kind of social worker who'd seen enough to know what mattered. She approached slowly, gave the children space. "Iris, Caleb, I'm Mrs. Monroe. I'm here to make sure you're both safe." Iris tightened her hold on Caleb. "We stay together," she said, "not a question, a statement." The line she wouldn't negotiate. Mrs. Monroe's face softened. "You stay together, I promise, tonight and every night until we figure out what comes next." "What about our mother, Grace Aldridge? She's missing. Someone needs to look for her." "Deputy Hayes is already working on that. We're going to do everything we can to find her." Iris wanted to believe that, wanted to trust another promise from another adult. But she'd used up her trust for one day, had spent it all on Wade and his brotherhood and the hope that eagles actually did protect their young. Wade stepped forward, moved to Mrs. Monroe, had a quiet conversation Iris couldn't hear. Mrs. Monroe listened, nodded, looked at the children with something that might have been understanding. She turned back to Iris. "Mr. Brennan is filing for emergency guardianship. It won't be approved tonight, maybe not for weeks, but he's starting the process. In the meantime, I have a good foster family. The Carters, they have space for both of you. Together." Iris looked at Wade, at the man who'd kept his promise, who'd brought Caleb home, who was now volunteering to take responsibility for children he'd known for less than 3 hours. "Why?" she asked. Wade crouched down, brought himself to her level. "Because your mother asked me to, 11 years ago, and I ignored her. I'm not making that mistake again." "You didn't know." "I should have known, should have checked, should have been there." He reached into his vest, pulled out the ring, the one that had hung around Iris's neck for 2 weeks. He held it between them. "Your mother gave me this the winter she turned 17. I told her it meant I'd always protect her. I didn't keep that promise, but I can keep it now, by protecting you." Iris looked at the ring, at Wade's hands holding it, at the scratch along the edge that had been there for 17 years. "She never said anything bad about you," Iris said. "She just said that sometimes family gets lost, and you have to decide if you want to find them again." Wade's jaw worked. He nodded, closed his hand around the ring. "I want to find her. Your mother. I want to bring her home. Will you let me try?" "Yes." "Even if it takes time, even if it's hard, yes. Even if we don't know how it ends." Iris looked at Caleb, at her brother still pressed against her side, at the boy she'd walked 3 days to save, at the reason she'd done everything she'd done. "I know how it ends," she said. "It ends with us together. Everything else we'll figure out." Wade stood, looked at Mrs. Monroe. "Take care of them." "I will." He looked at Iris one more time. "I'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk about next steps." Iris nodded, released Caleb long enough to climb into Mrs. Monroe's car. Caleb followed. They sat in the back seat, held hands, watched through the window as Wade and his brothers stood in the rain and watched them go. The eagle sign passed overhead. Wings spread, talons extended. eyes that seemed to follow as the car pulled onto the street. Iris touched the window where the sign had been. "We found them," she whispered to Caleb. "The eagles, just like Mom said." Caleb squeezed her hand. "They came for us. They'll always come for us. That's what eagles do." The car turned onto Main Street. The bar faded behind them. But the promise remained. Solid, real, the kind that children could build futures on. In the back seat, Iris Aldridge closed her eyes and let herself rest for the first time in 3 days. The Carters lived in a house that looked like it had been waiting for children. Yellow paint, a porch with 2 rocking chairs, a mailbox shaped like a barn. The kind of place that appeared in storybooks about families who baked cookies and read bedtime stories and never had reasons to whisper behind closed doors. Mrs. Monroe pulled into the driveway at 10:43. The porch light was on. A woman stood in the doorway, mid-50s, soft around the edges in the way that suggested she'd spent years making room for other people's children. "That's Mrs. Carter," Mrs. Monroe said. "She and her husband have been fostering for 15 years. They're good people." Iris held Caleb's hand in the back seat. Neither of them moved to unbuckle. "How long do we stay here?" Iris asked. "That depends on a lot of things. Finding your mother, Wade's petition, the investigation into the Larkin house. Could be days, could be weeks. But we stay together. You stay together. That's not negotiable." Mrs. Carter came down the porch steps, moved slowly, giving them time to adjust, to process, to decide whether they could trust another adult who made promises. She opened the car door, crouched down to their level. "Hi, I'm Margaret. You must be Iris and Caleb." Her voice matched her house. Warm, steady, the kind of voice that had welcomed frightened children before and knew how to make welcome sound genuine. "We have a room ready for you. 2 beds, clean clothes, food if you're hungry." Caleb looked at Iris, waiting for her decision, the way he'd learned to wait over the past 2 weeks. The way children learn to defer to siblings who've proven they can navigate dangerous waters. Iris unbuckled, climbed out. Caleb followed. Margaret Carter led them inside. The house smelled like something baking. Cinnamon, maybe? Or vanilla. The smell of normal, of safety, of the life other children lived while Iris and Caleb had been counting days in a house on Granger Street. Their room was upstairs, small, 2 twin beds with quilts that looked handmade, a lamp between them, a window that overlooked the backyard, clean, simple, nothing threatening. "Bathrooms across the hall," Margaret said. "Towels are in the closet. There's a toothbrush for each of you. Pajamas on the beds. They might be a little big, but we'll get your sizes tomorrow." She moved to the door, stopped. "I'm going to leave this open a crack. If you need anything, our room is at the end of the hall. Don't be afraid to ask." She left, footsteps fading down the hallway, the house settling into nighttime quiet. Iris and Caleb stood in the center of the room, still wearing their damp clothes, still holding hands, still not quite believing they were allowed to be here. "Is this real?" Caleb whispered. "I think so. What if it's not? What if we wake up and we're back there?" Iris squeezed his hand. "Then we'll leave again, and I'll find the eagles again, and they'll come for us again." Caleb nodded, processing, trying to build certainty from experience too recent to trust. "I'm going to shower," Iris said. "You should too. Then we sleep. Will you be here when I wake up?" "I'll be right in that bed, 3 feet away, all night." She released his hand, went to the bathroom, stood under water that ran hot and clean and endless. Let it wash away 3 days of rain and fear and the particular exhaustion that comes from carrying a responsibility too heavy for small shoulders. When she came back, Caleb was in his pajamas, sitting on his bed, holding a stuffed rabbit that looked new, store-bought new, the kind that hadn't been dragged through years of childhood. "Mrs. Carter left it," he said. "Is it okay to keep?" "It's okay." He climbed under the quilt, held the rabbit close, watched Iris move to her own bed. Where's Mom? Yeah, thank you for coming back. I never left Caleb, I just went ahead. She turned off the lamp. Darkness settled, not threatening, just the absence of light in a room where children were allowed to sleep without counting minutes until curfew. Across the space between beds, she could hear Caleb breathing, slow, eventually even. The sound of a 9-year-old boy finally letting go of the fear he had held for 2 weeks. Iris stayed awake longer, listening, making sure, being certain that this was real, that they had actually made it out, that the plan she'd built from observation and hope had worked exactly the way she'd needed it to work. At some point, exhaustion won. She slept. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and Caleb was exactly where she'd left him, 3 feet away, safe. The days that followed held a strange quality, like living in a snow globe, beautiful, contained, separate from the world outside. The Carters fed them, gave them clothes that fit, enrolled them in a local school where teachers had been briefed to be gentle, to understand that these children had been through something, that normal wouldn't come easy. Iris attended classes, learned math she already knew, and history she'd never thought to question, sat in a cafeteria where other children had complained about homework, and discussed television shows, and lived lives that had never included circle dates and binders. She didn't make friends, didn't try. Friendship required trust and explanation and energy she couldn't spare. But she watched, learned, gathered information the way she'd learned to gather it. Patterns, rhythms, the difference between adults who kept promises and adults who meant well but couldn't deliver. Wade visited on Wednesday, showed up at the Carter house with papers, legal documents, the petition for emergency guardianship. Margaret made coffee, left them alone in the living room, understanding that some conversations needed privacy. Wade sat across from Iris and Caleb, hands folded on his knees, the same careful posture he'd held at the bar 5 days ago, when a 10-year-old had walked into his life and rearranged it. I'm filing to become your legal guardian, he said. Temporary at first, while we look for your mother. If we find her, she makes the decisions. If we don't, then we deal with that when it comes. How long will it take? Iris asked. The petition could be approved in a few weeks, could take months, depends on the investigation, on what they find at the Larkin house, on whether they can track down your mother. And if they can't find her, Wade's jaw worked. The question hung between them with all its implications. Then we deal with that when it comes. For now, I'm telling the court I'm family, that I want custody, that I can provide a stable home. Why are you doing this? Caleb asked, his first words since Wade arrived. Small, uncertain. Wade looked at him, at this 9-year-old boy who'd been plucked from danger and dropped into uncertainty. Because your mother is my sister, which makes you my family, and I take care of family. You didn't take care of her, Caleb said. The truth landed hard, unadorned, the kind of observation children make when they haven't learned to soften reality for adult comfort. Wade didn't flinch. No, I didn't. I was angry at choices she made, decisions I didn't agree with. So I walked away, and I've regretted it every day since. Then why should we trust you won't walk away again? Iris put her hand on Caleb's arm. But Wade shook his head. It's a fair question. He leaned forward. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise I'll always know what to do. But I can promise I won't walk away. Not again. Not ever. You're stuck with me now. Caleb studied him. The way children study adults, looking for tells, for the signs that words and intentions don't match. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded once. Acceptance without enthusiasm. The cautious agreement of someone who'd learned promises were easier to make than keep. Wade stood, handed Iris a business card. That's my number. You need anything, you call, day or night. It doesn't matter. You call. Iris took the card, memorized the number, added it to her collection of information that might matter someday. After Wade left, Margaret came back into the living room. "He's a good man," she said. "How do you know?" Iris asked. "Because bad men don't file for custody of children who aren't legally theirs. Bad men don't show up on Wednesday afternoons with paperwork and promises. Good men break promises too." Margaret sat down, looked at Iris with the particular understanding of someone who'd fostered enough children to recognize trauma when it wore a 10-year-old's face. "Yes, they do, but the good ones try to keep them. That's the difference, they trim." That night, Iris lay in bed and thought about trying. About adults who tried and failed versus adults who didn't try at all. About her mother who tried to protect them by leaving them at Vincent's house, who tried and failed and disappeared trying. About Wade who was trying now, 11 years late, but trying. She fell asleep before she reached conclusions, woke to another day of school and normalcy and the slow processing of trauma that couldn't be rushed. Week 2 brought Dr. Ellis, a child psychologist with an office that tried too hard to look friendly. Bright colors, toys, a couch instead of chairs. The kind of place designed to make children forget they were talking about hard things. Iris sat on the couch, answered questions, told the story of the past 2 weeks in the flat recitation she'd perfected. Facts without emotion, events without editorializing. The map of what happened without the territory of how it felt. Dr. Ellis listened, took notes, asked follow-up questions that Iris saw coming before they arrived. "How are you sleeping?" "Fine." "Any nightmares?" "And no." "How are things with Caleb?" "Good. We're together. That's what matters." Dr. Ellis set down her pen, leaned back. "Iris, you don't have to be strong here. This is a safe space to not be strong." "I'm not being strong. I'm being careful." "What are you being careful about?" Iris looked at the toys, at the bright colors, at the office that tried so hard to make trauma feel manageable. "If I stop being careful, I'll fall apart. And Caleb needs me not to fall apart." "What if Caleb needs you to show him it's okay to fall apart, that he doesn't have to hold it together all the time?" The questions sat between them, unwelcome, accurate. Iris felt something crack in her chest, small, hairline, the beginning of a fracture she'd been preventing through sheer force of will. "I can't," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because if I let go, I won't be able to hold on again. And someone has to hold on. Someone has to keep planning, keep watching, keep making sure we're okay." "What if you're already okay? What if the planning part is over and now you just get to be 10 years old?" Iris looked at Dr. Ellis, at this adult who meant well, who understood psychology but didn't understand survival, who thought trauma could be processed in an office with bright colors and a couch. "I don't know how to just be 10 years old," Iris said. "I knew how 2 weeks ago, but I don't anymore." Dr. Ellis nodded, wrote something down. When she looked up, her eyes held something that might have been sadness. "Then we'll work on that, on finding the 10-year-old who's still in there, on letting her be scared and tired and not responsible for everything." The sessions continued, twice a week. Iris went, answered questions, practiced the exercises Dr. Ellis assigned, tried to learn how to let go of vigilance that had kept her alive. It didn't come easy. Letting go never did. But slowly, in increments so small she almost didn't notice, she started sleeping through the night, started eating without calculating how long the food would last, started existing in the present instead of 3 days ahead. Caleb processed differently. He cried more, talked less, clung to Iris in ways that made the Carters exchange worried glances when they thought the children weren't looking. But he was processing, moving through it, letting the fear out instead of packing it down where it could calcify into something harder to remove. Week 6 brought the custody hearing. Wade arrived in clothes Iris had never seen him wear. Slacks, a button-down shirt, the uniform of someone trying to convince a judge he was stable, responsible, capable of raising children who weren't legally his. The courthouse was smaller than Iris expected, less imposing, just a building where decisions got made about who belonged to whom and who had the right to make choices about futures. Judge Martinez was mid-60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses that she looked over instead of through. The kind of judge who'd seen enough to know when people were lying and when they were just desperate. She read Wade's petition, read the social worker reports, read the police reports from the Larkin house, read the letters from Margaret Carter, from Deputy Hayes, from men with names like Reese and Finn and Dutch who wrote about Wade Brennan's character in language that tried hard to sound official, but couldn't quite hide its loyalty. Then she looked at Iris. Miss Aldridge, you're 10 years old. That's old enough for me to hear what you want. Do you want to live with Wade Brennan? Iris stood. The courtroom felt too big, too formal. But she'd walked through rain for 3 days. She could walk through this. Yes, Your Honor. Why? Because he kept his promise. He said he'd bring my brother home, and he did. He said he'd file for custody, and he did. He says he won't walk away, and I believe him. What if we find your mother? What if she comes back and wants custody? Then she gets it. She's our mother, but until she comes back, Uncle Wade is family, and family shows up. Judge Martinez nodded, made notes, looked at Wade. Mr. Brennan, you haven't seen your sister in 11 years. You had no contact with these children until 6 weeks ago. Why should I believe this is about family and not guilt? Wade stood, met the judge's eyes. Because it's both, Your Honor. It's guilt that I wasn't there when Grace needed me. And it's family because they're blood, and blood matters. I can't change the past, but I can change what happens next. And what happens next is that these kids have a home with me for as long as they need it. The judge considered, looked at her paperwork, at the children, at Wade, at the decision that would determine what happened to two kids who'd already had too many decisions made for them by adults who didn't ask what they wanted. Temporary guardianship granted, pending further investigation, pending attempts to locate Grace Aldridge, pending quarterly reviews. You'll check in with social services monthly. Any concerns, and we revisit this immediately. The gavel came down. Decision made. Future determined. Wade and Iris looked at each other across the courtroom. No celebration, no relief, just acknowledgement. The beginning of something that might work if they tried hard enough. 2 weeks later, Iris and Caleb moved into Wade's house. It was smaller than the Carters, a 2-bedroom on the edge of town, the kind of place a single man lived when he didn't expect to need space for children. But Wade had cleared out his spare room, put in bunk beds, made space where space hadn't existed before. Iris took the top bunk, Caleb the bottom. They unpacked their things, the clothes the Carters had bought, the few items salvaged from the Larkin house, the stuffed rabbit Caleb still slept with, even though he was too old for it. Wade stood in the doorway. Rules are simple: school, homework, no lying. If you need something, ask. If something's wrong, tell me. I'm not good at guessing. What if we break a rule? Caleb asked. Then we talk about it, figure out why, fix it if we can, but nobody's getting sent away. You're here. That's not changing. He left them to settle, went downstairs, started dinner. The kind of normal evening routine that felt revolutionary after 2 weeks of uncertainty. Iris climbed to her bunk, looked out the window, could see the edge of town from here, the buildings, the streets, the ordinary life happening below, while she tried to figure out how to live an ordinary life herself. Caleb climbed up, sat beside her. Do you think Mom's alive? He asked. Iris had been avoiding this question. From Dr. Ellis, from herself, from the hope that kept trying to surface despite everything logic told her. I don't know, she said. I want her to be, but wanting doesn't make things true. Uncle Wade's still looking. I know. Does that mean you think she's alive? Iris looked at her brother, at 9 years old, trying to understand a world that had proven itself unsafe. I think Uncle Wade believes she's alive, and he's been wrong before, but he's trying to be right this time, so maybe we let him try. Caleb nodded, climbed back down, settled into his bunk with the rabbit tucked under his arm. The weeks became months. School continued. Therapy continued. Life arranged itself into patterns that started to feel like routine instead of temporary. Wade taught them to ride bikes, helped with homework, showed up to parent-teacher conferences looking uncomfortable but present, did the work of guardianship without claiming credit for it. Iris watched, waited, looked for the moment when he'd fail, when the promise would break, when walking away would become easier than staying. The moment didn't come. November faded into December. The town decorated for holidays. The Carters invited them for Thanksgiving. Wade said yes. They went, ate turkey, pretended this was normal, that families fractured and reformed all the time, that gratitude could exist alongside grief. On Christmas Eve, Wade brought them to the bar. It was different than that first night, quieter, just the core group, Reese, Finn, Merritt, Dutch, the men who'd ridden to Granger Street and brought children home. They decorated, a small tree in the corner, lights that blinked, the kind of effort men made when they wanted children to feel like children. Merritt had gifts, wrapped carefully, one for Iris, one for Caleb. Caleb got a new jacket, red, the right size. Iris got a journal, leather-bound, the kind with unlined pages that suggested someone thought her thoughts were worth recording. She ran her fingers over the cover, felt the texture, the weight, the implication that she had thoughts worth keeping. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," Merritt said. "Figured you might want to write things down, process things, however you need to process." Iris opened the journal, blank pages waiting, possibility without pressure. She closed it, set it aside, reached into her pocket, pulled out the silver ring. She'd been carrying it since the Carters, hadn't worn it, just kept it close. A talisman, a reminder, a piece of her mother she could hold. She looked at Wade. "Mom gave you this when she was 17. You said it meant you'd always protect her." "I did." "Did you mean it then?" "Yes." "Do you mean it now?" Wade looked at the ring, at Iris, at the question that held more weight than silver should carry. "I mean it about you and Caleb. I can't protect someone I can't find, but I can protect you. That's what this means now." Iris held out the ring. "Then you should keep it, to remember." Wade took it, held it in his palm, the scratch visible even in the bar's dim light. "I'll keep it," he said, "but not to remember, to give back, when we find her." "You think we will find her?" Wade looked at her, honest, direct, the way he'd learned to be with children who'd seen too much to accept anything less. "I don't know, but I'm not stopping until I do, or until there's nothing left to search." He stood, moved to the eagle sign above the bar, hung the ring on a small hook beneath it. The silver caught the Christmas lights, held them, reflected them back, reflected them. "It stays here," Wade said, "in reminder that promises matter, that family matters, that sometimes it takes 11 years and a 10-year-old to teach you what you should have known all along." Iris looked at the ring, at Wade, at Caleb sitting beside her eating cookies Merritt had made, at the men who become their family because blood wasn't the only thing that bound people together. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Deputy Hayes stepped through, snow on his shoulders, expressions serious. Everyone went still. Hayes moved to Wade, spoke low, but not low enough that Iris couldn't hear. "We found her. Grace. She's alive." The words dropped like stones into still water, ripples spreading, changing everything they touched. Wade grabbed Hayes' arm. "Where Portland Hospital. She escaped 3 days ago from a property connected to the Larkin investigation. She's been in ICU stable now, asking for her children." Iris stood. The journal fell from her lap. Caleb was beside her, both of them frozen between hope and disbelief. "She's alive," Iris whispered. Hayes looked at her, nodded. "She's alive, and she wants to see you." The drive to Portland took 6 hours. Wade drove, Iris and Caleb in the back seat, Hayes following in his cruiser. The kind of convoy that formed when something important needed witnessing. They didn't talk much. What was there to say? That hope had been right, that waiting had worked, that mothers who disappeared sometimes came back after all. The hospital appeared at dawn, gray building, efficient, the kind of place where emergencies became routine and routine sometimes saved lives. A nurse met them, led them through corridors that smelled like disinfectant and cafeteria food, to a room at the end of a hallway, door open, light spilling out. Wade stopped outside. "You should go in alone first, just you and Caleb. Give you time." Iris looked at the door, at the light beyond it, at the possibility that her mother was actually there, actually alive, actually asking for them. She took Caleb's hand. They stepped through. The woman in the bed looked like their mother and didn't. Thinner, bruised, arm in a cast, hair shorter than Iris remembered. But the eyes were the same. Grace saw them, tried to sit up, couldn't quite manage it. "Iris, Caleb." Her voice broke on their names, tears already falling before she'd finished saying them. Iris moved forward, slowly, still not quite believing, still waiting for this to be another trick, another disappointment, another lesson that hope was expensive. But Grace reached out with her good arm, and Iris took her hand, and it was real, warm, present. Her mother's hand, the same one that had pressed a ring into her palm 6 weeks ago and whispered instructions that had saved them all. "Mom." The word came out broken. All the fear and anger and relief Iris had been holding crashed through in a single syllable. Caleb climbed onto the bed, careful of the IV, of the bruises, of the mother who'd left them and come back damaged but alive. They held each other, all three, a tangle of arms and tears, and the particular relief that comes from finding what you thought was lost forever. Wade stood in the doorway, watching, not intruding, just bearing witness the way he'd learned to do, the way family did when family finally came home. Eventually Grace looked up, saw him, her expression complicated, grateful and ashamed and relieved all at once. "Wade, Grace, thank you for taking care of them. Thank Iris, she's the one who found me." Grace looked at her daughter. At 10 years old, that had walked through rain and fear and impossible odds to save her brother. "I knew you would," she said. "I knew you'd figure it out. I just didn't know if I'd be here to see it." "What happened?" Grace asked. "Where were you?" Grace's eyes went distant, seeing things the children couldn't. "I was trying to stop them, the people running the network. I got too close. They took me, kept me. I tried to get away. Took me 3 weeks, but I finally did." "Why didn't you just call for help? Why leave us there?" "Because they were watching. They knew about you, about Caleb. If I'd involved police, they'd have moved you before anyone could help. I needed to be inside, needed to understand the system so I could break it." She looked at Wade. "I sent you the ring because I knew if anything happened to me, Iris would remember, would find you, would do exactly what she did." Wade shook his head. "You put a lot of faith in a 10-year-old. She's my daughter. I know what she's capable of." Iris felt something settle in her chest. Understanding, maybe. The knowledge that her mother hadn't abandoned them, had been fighting, had been trying, had trusted Iris with the most important task because she knew her daughter could handle it. "I was so scared," Iris said. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But we're okay. Uncle Wade took care of us." Grace looked at her brother, at the man who'd spent 11 years angry and 6 weeks trying to make up for it. "You filed for guardianship. Temporary. until you came back. Now you're back. I can't take them yet, not like this, not until I'm healed, not until the investigation is over and I can prove I'm stable. Then we wait. They stay with me. You heal. We figure out the rest after. Grace nodded, squeezed Iris's hand. Is that okay with you? Staying with Wade while I get better. Iris looked at her mother, at Wade, at Caleb still tucked against Grace's side. Yeah, it's okay, as long as we know you're coming back. I'm coming back. I promise. This time I'm keeping the promise. They stayed until visiting hours ended, until a nurse came in and gently suggested Grace needed rest, until there was nothing left to say except goodbye, and we'll see you tomorrow. In the parking lot, Wade pulled out his phone, made a call. Merritt, tell everyone, we found her. She's alive. Through the phone, Iris could hear cheering, celebration, the sound of men who'd invested in a promise and seen it kept. Wade hung up, looked at the children. You want to drive home tonight or stay here? Home, Iris said. Mom's okay. We can come back tomorrow, but tonight I want to sleep in my own bed. Wade nodded, started the engine. They drove through darkness toward a town that had become home, toward a house that had become theirs, toward a future that was still uncertain but at least existed. In the back seat, Iris held Caleb's hand and watched lights pass outside the window. Her mother was alive, healing, coming back. Wade was keeping his promise, taking care of them, not walking away. The Eagles had done what Eagles do, protected their young, brought their family home. It wasn't the ending Iris had expected 6 weeks ago when she'd walked into a bar with a silver ring and a hand-drawn map. It was better, because this ending had room for beginnings, for healing, for the slow work of becoming a family that had been fractured and was learning to reform. The ring still hung beneath the Eagle sign at the bar, waiting for the day Grace could walk through that door and claim it back, waiting for the moment when promises came full circle. But for now it stayed, a reminder, a symbol, a piece of silver that had traveled through 11 years and 2 weeks and 6 hours of driving to bring family home. Iris closed her eyes, let herself rest, let herself be 10 years old in the back seat of a car, driven by an uncle who was learning to be a parent. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. The car turned onto their street. The house appeared, lights on. Wade had left them burning. A beacon, a welcome. They pulled into the driveway, climbed out, moved inside. Wade made hot chocolate. They sat at the kitchen table, talked about tomorrow, about when they'd go back to Portland, about what came next. Eventually, Caleb yawned. Wade sent him to bed. Caleb went without argument, exhaustion and relief making him compliant in ways he usually wasn't. Iris stayed, hands wrapped around her mug. Uncle Wade, yeah, thank you for everything, for keeping your promise. Wade looked at her, at this child who trusted him when she had every reason not to. Thank you for walking into my bar, for giving me a chance to get it right this time. Will Mom really be okay? I don't know, but we'll help her be okay. That's what family does. Iris nodded, finished her chocolate, stood. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow's a school day. Iris, she turned. You know you can stop planning now, right? Stop watching. Stop carrying everything. We've got you. Iris smiled, small, uncertain, but real. I'm working on it. Dr. Ellis says it takes time. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere. She went upstairs, climbed into her bunk, pulled out the journal Merritt had given her, opened to the first page, wrote in careful letters, Day 1 of after, Mom's alive. We're safe. The Eagles kept their promise. She closed the journal, set it aside, looked out the window at the town below. Somewhere in Portland, her mother was healing. Somewhere in this house, her brother was sleeping. Somewhere beneath an eagle sign, a silver ring was waiting. And Iris Aldrich, 10 years old, sister, daughter, survivor, was learning to be just a child again. The learning would take time, but she had time now, had safety, had family, had everything she'd walked 3 days in the rain to find. She closed her eyes and let herself rest. And for the first time in 6 weeks, she didn't count the minutes until morning.